Hi YouTubers, I showed you in another video how to make paneer tikka masala. Today I'm actually going to show you how to do chili paneer, which is very similar. So again, I've got here paneer, which has been cubed, and I've chosen one which has already been fried, so you've got the brown colouring on the paneer itself, but you can also use the plain one. The plain one is probably a little bit healthier actually, because this would most likely have been fried, and obviously paneer is cheese, so it is a little bit fattening. How much have I got here? I've got 400 grams, and this cost me £3.75, which is kind of normal for paneer. And then obviously I've got capsicums, just for a bit of different crunch to the dish, and just adding something a bit healthier, vegetables. And so I've got yellow, green and red capsicums. So just remove the head of the capsicum and take the seeds out from inside here, and then slice the capsicums. Now you have a choice. You can either do it thinly, as I have done, or as you'll probably see in most dishes, it's usually about this size, which is just about less than an inch. When you go to a restaurant, it tends to be slightly bigger, but I also find that when you're cooking, and if I do it at home, I prefer slightly smaller pieces. It's just easier to eat, I think, and the taste isn't really much different because the taste comes from the spices. So with this dish, unlike the paneer tikka, there won't be any yogurt used with this, and this isn't going to go in the oven. It's actually going to be, we're going to actually use a wok and stir fry this. I find it easier in the wok because there's a lot more space. And in terms of what else needs to go in here, we'll also add an onion. And this paneer has actually been taken out of the freezer. Usually it's in the refrigerator section when you go to any Indian food shops, but it's perfectly fine to freeze this. So I mean, it's got a date on there. This, I've literally just bought it 2 days ago, so end of December, and it's valid until sort of early March, so it'll last for 3 months. It's kept in the freezer. Obviously, the quicker you can use up your ingredients, the better, I would say, but it will stay in the freezer for that long. And I'm also going to add a fresh green chili to this. So I've chosen sort of medium to large size onion. This quantity, it's probably enough for 3 people, I would say. It just depends how if you've got any other dishes going alongside it. So but usually it's enough for 3 people. I could have this as a main meal, and I would have it with naan, which of itself is quite heavy, and then also the paneer itself is fairly heavy. So you can have it just entirely by itself with naan, or you can serve it with other things. Okay, so I've added a teaspoon, but I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of cumin seeds to the oil. Let that cook. stir it in. So it seemed like quite a bit, but a lot of the flavour from this actually comes from these cumin seeds. So let that cook for a little bit before adding the onion and the chilli. Okay, so it's toasted for a while, and now to that I've decided to add that chilli and this onion which has been chopped. And it's on sort of low to medium heat. Let those onions cook through before we add some spice to this. So the onions are now cooked through. They've been cooking for a few minutes. So now we can add our capsicums. So I've added all of the capsicums now. Okay, so capsicums have been cooking for a few minutes, and they don't have to be completely cooked, because once the sauce is added it will be fine. Right, so I've added. Alright, so this is ingredients for chili paneer. So we've got the paneer ready there. That's just come out of the freezer, like I said from the previous video. So I'll be defrosting that in the microwave before I actually use it. I've literally just taken it out and left it out for a bit. We've got 3 capsicums, and this recipe is probably for about 3 people. 400 grams I've got here. It depends really. You can either have more paneer in the dish or less. Obviously less would probably be slightly healthier because it is cheese at the end of the day, which is obviously a little bit fattening. So you can add more capsicum and less paneer if you wish. You know, I do like the taste of it, and it is sometimes an occasional treat, so I've obviously got quite a fair amount of paneer there. But if you look at the quantity of that compared to the capsicums, it's pretty much half and half. I've got my green chili there, which I'm going to chop in a minute, and I've got 1 medium to large size onion, a large-ish medium onion, and there's different ways of chopping it. So I prefer, like I said, with the capsicums, you can either do them slightly smaller pieces like that, or you can have a couple of what you see in the restaurants, which is slightly almost an inch size, and then you could do the same with the onion here, and that's what you tend to see in the restaurant. But I prefer usually to do the capsicums a little bit smaller, and the same obviously then again with the onion. You kind of need to keep them both roughly the same, or you can have them sliced this way, but I'm going to be doing it this way, just showing you the options. It's entirely up to you how you want to do it. The spices and the flavouring is at the end of the day what's going to make this dish taste good, and it's your preference really how you want to adjust it. Okay, I'm actually going to empty the paneer onto a plate because, like I said, I've bought this from the shop and then frozen it because sometimes you don't know when you're going to use it, so it's always handy to do that. Unless you know you're going to make it quickly, in which case you can just keep it in the fridge. So I've emptied it onto a plate because I don't really want to use the plastic in the microwave, and then that's just going to go in the microwave maybe for 10 minutes. Just have a look at it, take it out, see if it looks like it's softened. If not, keep it in there for a little bit longer. Make sure you've got the defrost button on your microwave and not the normal button. And this is something that you would probably normally do first if you have happened to frozen your paneer, and while that's getting defrosted, then you can be chopping the capsicums and onions. And just since I happen to have taken the onion out, I just want to show you this little bag which I got it from John Lewis, and it's called an onion store. And apparently, according to this, it's supposed to keep your onions fresher for longer. And it's got a blackout lining inside. And I've also got one for potatoes. And it says it provides a dark environment. You're not going to be able to see that very clearly on here, but anyway, it says it provides a dark environment for onions to be stored, which prevents sprouting. The drawstring opening enables easy access, and the side zip ensures onions at the bottom of the bag are used first. And I got that, and it's basically just £3. So I got one of those from John Lewis, just since it's there, I just thought I'd show you. And it has a zip on the side. So the idea is you put the onions in from here, and as you need to top up your store of onions, they'll go in at the top. The oldest onions will be at the bottom. You use this zip and you use it from the bottom. Just thought I'd add that to you, just to let you just share that. Alright, this is my chilli. So I've obviously taken the top off, slit it, and I've taken some, not all, but some of the seeds out, because sometimes it can be too hot, and it's not always good for certain people to have these seeds, particularly men. So I tend to take it out, and you can then adjust the flavour using the minced green chilli paste. I often use that, or if I've made some of my own fresh chilli paste, I'll add that. But it's entirely up to you. If you want to keep the seeds in, you can do. The hotness of the dish obviously comes mainly from the seeds. That's obviously where a lot of the chilli actually comes from, so it's your choice. So I've chopped the chilli that you saw before, just look like that, into these tiny little pieces, and you can also add pretty much a whole chilli even with the seeds in, but provided you take it out. So you can chop off the head, slit it, maybe cut it in half, and then add that also to the dish, but then remember to take it out before you serve it. So I will probably do that, since I haven't actually got any green chilli paste, just to add a bit of a hotness. So, but you don't need that. You wouldn't need this if you're going to use the green chilli paste, otherwise it is probably going to be too hot. And I'm making this dish to medium hot, because that is the temperature that I can tolerate. I'm not someone who can eat extremely hot food, but if you can, by all means use more. So here's my wok. I've literally just put it on heat, medium heat. Just going to allow it to heat up a tiny bit before I add any oil to it. You can do that with a wok, probably not with a normal saucepan, but when you do Chinese cooking, you are allowed to do that. And I'm just going to use some oil. I've got here sunflower oil. You can use olive oil as well. There's nothing to stop you from using that because that's also quite healthy. Vegetable oil. So I'm going to use some of the sunflower oil, and I'm going to pour in I would say that's 2 to 3 tablespoons of oil, so there's a fair amount of oil in there. I do tend to use a little bit more, but if you want to use less, you can use a little bit less. But with the paneer, it will soak up quite a bit of the oil as well. So to avoid sticking, it's useful to have a little bit more oil in there. So it's coated the pan and it's probably a little bit more. So that's on there, and then we're going to add some spices and then our onions and chili will go in there next. And since the paneer has already, I've bought a packet which has already been fried, I don't need to do anything extra with it. But if I'd bought the plain packet, then I would have to, I would have to add that in fairly soon before I add the capsicums. But in this case, I'm going to do it the other way around. So here's my spice tin, and I'm not going to use everything in here. I've got mustard seeds, but I wouldn't use that for this. There's cumin seeds, gyro here. Sorry, I'm using my mobile phone to record this, and it's pretty good, but not necessarily as sharp close up. So anyway, this is dana gyro, which is cumin and gyro powder mixed together, and you usually can buy that by itself. We've got some dudge here, which is cinnamon sticks, and I may use that, I may not. There's turmeric there, which I'll definitely be using. Dana gyro I'll be using. Gyro I'll be using. I won't be using the dried chilies. I will probably be using a little bit of the red chili powder, less for a little bit for the heat, but not as much, more a little bit for colour, which I'll also get from adding tomatoes. Alright, so this is now hot enough. You can see that the oil was pretty hot, so I'm going to turn that down a little bit. You don't want it to be so hot that it burns everything. So if it does get to temperature where it's a little bit too hot, then turn it down. And I'm going to use at least a tablespoon of gyro, which I'm going to wait for a little bit allow it to cool down. Okay, and here's another ingredient that we'll be using: chopped tomatoes, which, even though it says chopped, it needs to be finer because they're chopped but they've still got chunks in them. So I always buy the chopped ones, but I still use a blender. So but price wise they're the same as even having the big plum tomatoes, so I go with that. So I'm going to add it to this jug, which is fairly deep, just because it's a lot easier to blend in here. I haven't got the other type of blender. Well, actually no, I have, but I've also got the hand blender, which I find a lot more convenient to use and quicker to clean as well. So I'm just going to use my hand blender to blend those tomatoes. Right, okay, so that's now been blended using the hand blender. In the meantime, I've actually switched off the wok purely because I'm also trying to show you these other ingredients, which normally I would have done first before turning that wok on. Garlic paste, ginger paste, or fresh, whichever you prefer. I use these, that they actually taste perfectly fine, just for convenience, to be honest. And if you were to use it, I think maybe a teaspoon of garlic is maybe 1 or 2 of the individual garlic pieces. Ginger, a teaspoon of that will probably be maybe small to medium size bulb, or ginger piece, sorry, and then you'd use a herb mill and blend it. So this is obviously just much easier, it's convenient, and a lot of people are using these pastes now because it just saves a bit of time. Right, so the capsicums and paneer are in the wok. They've been cooking for a little bit. Now we add chopped but blended tomatoes. That's 1 tin, 400 grams. And the capsicums will cook in this sauce. Make sure you mix everything in properly so everything's covered. And now add some spices. About 3/4 teaspoon of turmeric. And I mean, these are the spoons that come with the tin, so 2 of these spoons is usually about a teaspoon. So I'm going to add 3 teaspoons of danajiro, ¾ teaspoon of red chili powder, bearing in mind we've already put chilies in here, so if it's not hot enough we can just add more later. And then salt will also go in here, but I'll put that in last. Salt kind of brings all the flavours together. And now we're going to add a heaped teaspoon of garlic paste, which I'll add a little bit more. And the same with the ginger. So it's about 2 teaspoons. If you don't like it with that much spice, then obviously do half and then taste it and see if you want to add more. And this is basically ready. Once it's had a little bit, so I'd say allow it to simmer for about 8 minutes. You might want to turn the heat down a little bit. So it still needs to have some sauce to it, so you don't need it to be completely dry. Okay, and I just literally added a bit of water to the jug just so I can get the rest of the tomato out of the jug. And obviously You then add a little bit more liquid to help it cook. Stop it from burning, really, because if you haven't got enough liquid in there, it will stick. And the final ingredient to this is salt. Excuse me. So I'll add a teaspoon of salt. I'm trying to work with one hand here because I'm using the mobile to record. I don't tend to use that much salt, so I tend to use about a teaspoon. And this amount of chili paneer is for 3 people. And there are different ways of making this. You can also use lettuce. You can have less tomato in there, so it's a bit drier. A lot of restaurants you'll see that maybe they do a slightly dry version, but I actually prefer this. So this is my version. And that's just going to cook, like I said, for maybe another 6, 7, 8 minutes. Keeping it on low heat. Checking on it so it doesn't stick or burn. I'm actually going to add half a teaspoon of, well, half a heaped teaspoon of garam masala, just to add a little bit of heat. Slightly different from the chilies, it's a different type of heat. You don't have to, I normally don't do it with it, but I'm going to try it this time. So I don't have any lettuce to add to this, but you can do, like I said. And normally you'd have chopped coriander, which you'd add probably right at the end, just to garnish it. But I've run out of coriander, so I'm not going to add that today. But normally I would recommend that you add some coriander. So